Ladies and gentlemen, you are tuned into the message here on Carbon Sound Music for Life. We have Sampha in the building on the message on Carbon Sound. Thank you for being here, Sampha.
Hello, yeah, it's a pleasure.
You're performing that
There
first
is that
time.
as well.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. So you excited? What are your feelings
Yeah,
on the performance?
I've kind of been. Yeah, this is one of the ones, sort of like a legendary town, and yeah, I'm looking forward to playing tonight and seeing what the energy's like and seeing what the people are like, and yeah.
Can you give us a taste test of what we can expect on the stage? Or is there going to be a drum circle or something like that?
Yeah, there's a drum circle. It's just it's just 5 musicians. I mean, including myself.
Okay.
Just play. It's quite simple.
Okay.
Like understated, but it's very much about the sort of instruments and the musicians and us connecting with each other and the crowd, and and that's it. It's kind of like sort of back to basics, I guess.
Okay. How do you feel about the response to this album?
It's been wonderful. There's a lot of people who've connected with it in different ways, and it's great going out and like playing live, because you can kind of see the kind of pure connection.
Yeah.
The difference between before, like I released the album, I played a bunch of shows, and then after releasing the album and seeing people connect to these songs, it's slightly like an out of body experience as well, because it just feels like the music, I don't know, it goes beyond yourself,
Yeah.
It becomes other people's, and they take it on and give it a new life and new consciousness. Yeah.
So I hear you talk about coming from an intuitive place and conscious, and I'm sensing a lot of that in the music. I felt like it made me go deeper within myself.
Yeah.
Again, was that on purpose, or that's just you being you?
I think it's a bit of both, really.
Okay.
I think it was me. I was going through a period of questioning, I guess, questioning what kind of spirit meant to me, and also just the mechanics of life, and through the lens of COVID, which gave everybody that time to sort of slow down and sort of recognize the patterns you're in, the sort of social system you're in, and all these different your relationships, personal relationships.
Right.
And me personally, I was like, I felt like maybe a slight disconnect.
Yeah.
Or I was like just going through the motions.
Yeah.
And there's times where I felt like, I needed some sort of bird's eye view, and I feel like this idea of like practice or spirituality or discipline is something I needed in my life, and the music was a bit of like, I don't know, me sort of just documenting those thoughts and feelings.
Okay. So you've been on tour. It started April 2nd.
If you say so. I think so. Yeah.
That's what the papers say. That's what the papers say. I'm trying to be professional. How's tour been so far?
It's been really good. Yeah.
What is really good? What makes it good?
Like it's quite a privilege, I think. Touring's a weird thing, because there's one thing, I miss, like, I'm not with my family,
right,
and so that part is difficult. But, but I'm also like surrounded by really nice people, and they're all musicians. Everyone's into music, and philosophizing about life and having jokes, and then also like I guess this experience of like connecting with people quite sort of deeply, night after night, and sort of just preparing for that. It's quite like it does feel like a practice of sorts, like it's a discipline of sorts, and so it's nice to sometimes be forced into that.
Right.
As much as I don't like, I actually find like playing live, I get sort of anxious about it. It's not the first thing that I would like want to do. Like, oh yeah, I can't wait to play this live.
Okay, so you get anxious too.
Yeah, like about preparing it, and the way in which I play is relatively complicated. But it's so special, like going out and seeing how how much crowds are able to like will you on to do well. People aren't like coming to watch you fail.
Right.
It's really nice having that sort of symbiotic kind of relationship between music I make and people who like listen to it and are affected by it. Yeah, it's cool.
You're a father.
I am. Yeah.
And so I presume that there's some fatherhood elements that are onto your album. Everything that you're talking about in fatherhood, or that you're bringing it up, is it things that you figured out or things that you still don't understand?
There's a lot of things going on. There's definitely, like it's a big sort of learning curve and lesson. In terms of like, it feels like a really strong mirror. One, just bringing someone else into the world. I mean, I helped. I didn't personally, but in terms of humbling, it's very humbling having a child.
What was humbling about it?
Well, in terms of like one, my own existential sort of dread sort of just moved. So now it's like, oh yeah, instead of thinking about how old am I gonna, be before I, transition. How many more years of my daughter's life am I going to be around to help her? You kind of transitions to that.
You start thinking about those things,
which becomes an anxiety in its own thing.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily, but it's a different sort of thing. I'm like, that's like the sort of one of the main things that happens, and then also just like sort of extraordinariness of life. Like through my daughter, I kind of see myself, or I see my parents or my partner. And yeah, just watching someone else grow, and then, thinking, and then also being able to empathize, like recognizing unconditional love isn't necessarily just it just doesn't have, you have to work on it.
You gotta put some work into it, right?
It doesn't just like, oh yeah, because it's not something that just, it's inbuilt, okay, you're a father now, here's unconditional love. And
right.
You don't have to do anything.
Right. Now you have to do everything.
It's like, oh, you have to make more of a conscious, you have to be even more hyper conscious and really empathize with something, like go out of your own sort of self and go back in time and being like, oh, she really actually is struggling, or she actually is tired. So there's a lot of deep breaths and
this album marked your own journey of self-improvement. You said, rather than being genuinely interested in things just for the sake of focusing on them, I got into this frame of mind where everything was a currency for music. Before I even get to the second part of that, what does that mean?
It could be like, all right, I'm going to like get fit, blah, 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 so I can like sing better and I, look more like this and and I can, be more fashionable or whatnot. Instead of like, or like reading something like, oh, if I read this, it's going to somehow, seep into like songwriting rather than like just a thing of like, just being interested in something for the sake of it. There is like, for me, music, it just somehow encompasses like almost everything.
Hey, music for life. What's your relationship to fame? How has fame and success been?
Interesting. Like there's different, obviously, levels to fame, and I'm not someone I'm not of extreme fame. Do you know what I mean? Like I can go out and every now and then someone might recognize me. But even within that, there's definitely an awareness of like I'm somewhat in the public eye, and people know of me as this thing that they sort of perceive, through my music. Yeah. And that comes with its things, It's a big balancing act, because that brings its own, reward, in terms of the circuitry of like being rewarded all the time and being so sort of mirror focused, It's definitely tricky land to sort of navigate, because you can sometimes be overly self-aware or too self-conscious or even vain.
Right.
But at the same time, it's a beautiful thing, thinking that I'm, sort of making music and it's actually connecting to people, and people actually listen to, these things that are like, I'm sometimes deeply insecure about, or, I put so much time and effort into it, and I'm like, oh, is anyone really going to notice this? So it is nice and rewarding, but it's definitely a balancing act,
As an artist who has been successful and has, as you described, some degree of visibility, we can see you, we know who you are. Do you feel like how you handle fame and success, is that a part of your strategy as an artist?
It is tricky. I mean, I have a nature to me that is quite like sort of reserved and hermit-like. Like I'm just naturally not that out there. So I'm not like sort of documenting my life and sharing it on social media I feel like sometimes I need to do it a bit more, in fact. There's a lot of to and fro from like, thinking about sort of, because that is also attached to your kind of livelihood.
Right.
Sometimes, like, okay, how famous how famous you're perceived to be, sort of either numerically or whatever, can sometimes, I guess, translate into a booking or this or this and this amount of money or and it's definitely that art and commerce kind of tug of war that goes on alongside things, like okay, there are these kind of outcomes to fame, and I have to set then my own sort of expectations, and like, okay, maybe I don't need the biggest house in the world, and I don't need the fastest car, and I'm gonna sort of just stay more true to myself, or maybe I should embrace this thing and not try and be too cool or like make pop or like It's definitely this. It's not like a fixed point of understanding,
Yeah.
it keeps on moving, like my sort of relationship to
Yeah.
it, you know?
Yeah. I want to dig into your collaborations. You said you find it easier to work on other people's projects than your own. Why is that?
Sometimes, like maybe in some aspects of things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like saying, oh, that's a good idea, or maybe, oh yeah, no, this is fine, or like letting go of things. With my own stuff, I'm really like the policeman, I'm the doctor, I'm the mayor, do you know what I mean? I'm always thinking about 10 billion different angles. Whilst with somebody else, I'm just thinking about what they need, and, you know,
Right.
sort of like just listening to them, and someone else is captaining the ship, so I kind
Right.
of let go of that sort of bird's eye kind of inquiry.
What makes you go, we got to get in the studio. I got to put this down. We got to make this.
Well, there's times maybe when I've been listening to something, and, you know, in the middle of the night, I get like an idea, and I'm like, oh, I need to lay this down, or I need to like.
Do you wait, or do you jump up and do it immediately, or is the idea?
I sometimes I put it down. Sometimes I'm like, oh, if it's strong enough, I'll remember it.
Okay.
So, and like even like last night, I had some ideas, and I was
Okay.
like, oh, okay. Oh yeah, I remember them. Okay,
I was gonna ask you, are you creating on the tour still?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Okay.
It's difficult. I think in terms of like, you know, being able to like on a tour bus, or like capture things, and do things, it can be difficult. But I haven't made too much on tour that I've actually used, like started making on tour, you know. But
Okay.
I can work on stuff that I'm already working on tour, and it's really cool
Got
actually,
you.
because sometimes like this change of scenery can be like sort of like a nice sort of perspective shift on what I'm doing, and give me a new perspective on what I'm doing. Yeah.
Right. I'm enjoying your vibe. You got a real dope vibe, but you got to get ready for your show, I presume.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
you probably
yeah.
should get out and maybe taste a little bit of the Twin Cities. Shouldn't just be work.
No, I'm gonna step out and get some sun. And
Has anybody suggested anything to you? Any places to go? Have you heard anything you wanted to go?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. Just like Ruffin, artist who plays in my band. Sanni's gonna go to Paisley.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah, no, I'm gonna either take any suggestions if anyone's got any for any good museums or something. But usually, you know, to be honest as well, I'm so focused on the show as well.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'm like, okay, I need to like not talk, and I need to just go.
I know.
It's kind of like slightly sad, but you know.
Yeah. So we'll come back to the Twin Cities just for a taste test on the low. I mean, you got the vibe. You can do it on the low.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for being in today, Sampha.
It's all right, pleasure.
This has been Sampha on The Message on Carbon Sound Music for Life.